Greetings. So this week we're in Chapter 5 and we're going to be covering the principles of voice leading. And right now we're going to focus on the melodic line. Okay, so here in exercise 5-1a, we are to criticize each melody in terms of the rules for simple melodies discussed in the melodic line section on pages 66 through 69. So here on page 67, we have pretty much everything that we need to know to create a simple melody and to analyze melodies as well. So let's start from the beginning and we'll go over each one. So rhythm. Keep the rhythm simple, with most durations being equal to or longer than the duration of the beat. Okay, so you want on, say, beat 1, we have a quarter note. And that's fine. Okay, we wouldn't want to start trying to do eighth notes or 16th notes. Okay, we want something equal to the beat or longer than the duration of the beat, like this half note here. Or we could use a dotted half or a whole note. Okay, we want to keep it simple. So, and the final note should occur on a strong beat. And the strong beats, well, in 4/4 time would be 1 and 3. Okay. So let's see. Harmony. Every melody note should belong to the chord that is to harmonize it. Okay, so each of the notes must belong to the chord below it, right here. So we have the key of F, you have the 1 chord, and the first note is an A, and that is the third of the chord, of the F major chord. We have F, A, C, right? And this is also continuing beat 1, chord 1. On beat 2 we have an F. So those are the chord tones. And we want to try and stay within that right now. Okay, we're not doing any non-chord tones at this point. Okay, so the contour of the melody should be primarily conjunct, stepwise. That means, like in this melody, you see, although it has an uninteresting contour, the stepwise motion is used, which is good. We just want to throw in maybe something a little more interesting now and then, throw in a leap now and then. Okay, so, and that brings us to the leaps. Now, there's a lot going on here with these, so we have to be very careful with leaps. So we want to avoid augmented intervals. Okay, so you don't want a leap, say, going from C to F sharp. Okay, that would be an augmented fourth. And then, like, say, C to D sharp, that would be an augmented second. So we want to avoid those kind of leaps. And the augmented second is particularly tricky to avoid when you're in the minor key. Using the raised leading tone creates an augmented second from the 6th to the 7th scale degree. Okay, so watch out for that. We also want to avoid sevenths and intervals larger than an octave. Okay, so octaves are fine. You gotta watch out for sevenths and intervals that are larger than an octave. Diminished intervals may be used if the melody changes direction by step immediately after the interval. So, let's say you had an interval going from C to G flat. Okay, that would be a diminished fifth. It's also a tritone. It sounds the same as the C to the F sharp. So we'd want, say it was going up, C to G flat. If the leap is going up, we want it to resolve down, okay, in the opposite direction. If the leap was going the opposite way, Jumping down, we'd want it to resolve up. Okay, by step, immediately after the interval. Okay. Now, a melodic interval larger than a perfect fourth is usually best approached and left in the direction opposite of the leap. Again, we want to approach it and leave it in the opposite direction. Okay. So let's see. When smaller leaps are used consecutively in the same direction, they should outline a triad. Okay. So if you're doing leaps in the same direction, make sure that it fits some kind of triad, or an inversion of a triad. Okay. Now, tendency tones. In tonal music, the 7th scale degree has a strong tendency to move up to 1. An exception to this is the scale-wise line descending from 1, 7, 6, 5. Okay. The only other tendency tone that needs to be considered is scale degree 4, which often moves down to 3, but not with the regularity in which 7 goes to 1. Okay, so here they have some examples. The first one is good. All of the notes belong to the chord that it belongs to. And let's see. So we have stepwise motion, okay, going up, and then we have a little leap here, okay, E to G, a nice little minor third, and then we go to the F, and the F has a strong tendency to go the 4th scale degree, which is the F in the key of C. It has a strong tendency to go to the 3, but not with the regularity which 7 goes to 1, so that's okay. All right. We talked a little bit about this one. It's following the stepwise motion, but it's an uninteresting contour, so it's kind of a boring melody. Okay. This one has lots of nice little leaps and interesting contour, but it has 2 focal points, which is the highest note of the melody. Okay, and for right now we want 1 focal point. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look and analyze number 1 here. Okay, so we're in the key of F major, and we're starting off with an A. We know that's the 3rd of the chord, and then it does a little leap down to the F, which is the tonic. So far so good. Those both belong to the 1 chord. Now here we are with the 5 chord, and we have an E. Okay, the 5 chord in the key of F is C major, right? So we have a C, E, and G in that chord, and we are using the E there, so that's good. Now look what it does though. See, the E is also the leading tone in the key of F, right? It's a half step below the tonic. So the leading tone is a tendency tone, and it has a strong tendency to move up to 1. And the exception is the scale-wise line that goes down 1, 7, 6, 5. It doesn't do that here. It leaps a major third down to C. Okay, so that's not good. So we'll just put check there. This belongs to the F major chord, right? The C, good. Now we're on the 4 chord, which is B flat major, and we have a D. So that's good. B flat, D, F. Now it leaps up to a B flat, which is a chord tone, so that's good. And that's a large leap. And that's a minor sixth, right? So we have to watch how it is left. Okay? So a melodic interval larger than a perfect fourth is usually best approached and left in the direction opposite to the leap. Okay. So the approach is going up and the leap is going up. Okay. So that's not that great. We might want the approach to be going down, up, down, right? But I think that's okay. So we have the minor sixth, and it does leave in the opposite direction of the leap. Okay? So you can check with Miss Son on the approach on that one. So for right now, I'm going to say that's okay. Not great, but okay. All right. And then we go, it's part of the one chord, right? The A, good. Now we go back to B flat. Okay. Stepwise motion. That's okay. It's a chord tone. But what is the problem here with that? You see, the highest note of the melody here is the B flat, and that is a focal point. And we want a single focal point, right? Not two focal points. So, boom. So we'd want to correct something within the melody around these notes. And this is kind of neat though. The fourth scale degree is B flat in F major. And it does go to the tendency tone, to the 3, which is good. Okay. The A is the third of the F major triad for the tendency tone going down to 3. Right. Okay, so this one didn't really pass muster here, so you'll do number 2, okay, and then I'll continue with number 3 and we can go over this together. Okay, so number 3, we're in the key of D major and we're starting on the 1 chord. And our first melody note is the A. So we know that that is the 5th of the D major triad, D, F sharp, A. Okay, so far so good. Now we're moving to the 4 chord, which is G major. And we're on a B. So that is the 3rd of the G major, G, B, D, right? And we're moving in stepwise motion. We have chord tones in both. So far, so good. Now here we are on the 5 chord, and we have the C sharp. Okay, so that is the 3rd of the A major triad, A, C sharp, E. Okay, now it's also the leading tone, the C sharp, right? It's the half step below the tonic. And what does the leading tone have a strong tendency to do? Move up to 1, right? And we see that it does do that. And that's good. It moves to the root of the 1 chord. Okay, so a lot of stepwise motion. Now, here we have the 1, the D, going back to the 5 chord to the C sharp. Okay, that's okay. Now, remember the exception. The tendency tone, the leading tone, likes to go up to 1. But sometimes you can go from 1 down 7, 6, 5, and so on, right? Here's that exception. Okay? So let's check that out. We're going 1, 7, 6, 5, okay. But 6, the B. Now we're on the 1 chord, D major. Now is the B in the D major triad? No. D, F sharp, and A are the only notes that we can use. So, boom. So let's move on. And we have the A, and that is part of the 1 chord. That's the 5th. And here we are with the G, the root of the 4 chord. And that is also the 4th scale degree. It's a tendency tone that likes to move down to 3. And it does that to the F sharp, the 3rd of our 1 chord. Okay? So this one doesn't pass muster either. Alright? So you go ahead and work on number 2, and I recommend that you keep the book open to this page. That way you can refer to it anytime if you run into some kind of difficulty or if you have a question. Okay? So best of luck with that, and I'll see you in the next section. Thank you. Okay, so here we are in exercise 5-2, part A. And we are to analyze the following excerpt using Roman numerals and bass position symbols. Then show beneath each Roman numeral the structure of the chord by writing C or O for close or open structure. The notes in the parentheses are not part of the chord and should be ignored for the purpose of harmonic analysis. Okay, so we're back to Roman numeral analysis with our inversion symbols, but this time we have to determine whether the chord is an open or closed structure. So on page 71, we see that the closed structure is less than an octave between soprano and tenor. Okay, close is less than an octave. Open structure is an octave or more between soprano and tenor. Okay. So, keeping that in mind, let's work on our analysis. It gives us the key. We're in A major. Okay. So let's find out what chord we start with. Most likely it's going to be a 1 chord, right? A, C sharp, E. There it is. It's our major 1 chord in root position. Now, is it open or closed structure? Okay, so we need to look at the soprano and the tenor and the distance between those, right? So we have E to E, okay? So that is an octave. So that would be an open structure, because an open structure is an octave or more between soprano and tenor, okay? So we'll put an O there. All right. You can do the next one. And here we are. We've got an E, a B, and an E, and an A. That's a non-chord tone. And it looks like some kind of suspension, right? So we have a G sharp here. Now that looks more like our triad. E, G sharp, B. Okay? And that is a root position 5 chord. Now if we look at the soprano and the tenor, we have a G sharp and then a B. So that is a G sharp 4, and this is a B3. Okay, so if this is C4, we go up and we have the G sharp 4. And if this is C3, that would be B3, okay? And you can see that this is less than an octave, okay? So it's actually a major sixth. So here we go. That would be closed. All right? Okay, you got that one. And I'll do this one. So you've got a D, an F sharp, and an A. That's a D major triad. And in the key of A major, that is the 4 chord. And it's in root position. Okay. So let's look at the soprano and the tenor. And we have an F sharp 4 and an A3. Okay, so that is less than an octave. So it would be closed. And you can do the next one. And they gave us this one. We got a 5/7. Okay. And it doesn't indicate whether it is open or closed for a good reason here. There's no note in the tenor. This is more of a piano style arrangement anyway, so I'll leave the last one to you. Okay, that's a fun one, and I'll see you in the next section. Thanks. Okay, so here we are in part B of 5-2, and we are to review the 2 conventions concerning spacing and voicing a single triad on pages 70 through 72. Then we point out in the following example any places where those conventions are not followed. So let's take a look at those 2 conventions. Okay, so in your beginning part writing exercises, it would be advisable for you to follow 2 simple conventions concerning spacing. 1. Crossed voices. Do not allow any part to cross above the soprano or below the bass, because the essential soprano-bass counterpoint might become unclear. The alto and tenor lines may cross briefly if there is a musical reason to do so. Okay, so here we have in the example, we have the alto above the soprano. See, and that's a no-no. And down here, we have the tenor below the bass. Okay, so those are crossed voices, and we want to avoid that. Let's see. So occasionally that may happen between alto and tenor lines if there's a musical reason, but for now let's just avoid that entirely. And number 2, spacing. When writing for 3 or more parts, avoid overly spacious sonorities by keeping adjacent upper parts, excluding the bass, within an octave of each other. For example, in a 4-part texture, there should be no more than an octave between soprano and alto, or between alto and tenor, although there might be more than an octave between tenor and bass. Okay, so in the example here, we see that there's more than an octave between the soprano and the alto, right? That's a C, and then the first ledger line would be a C, so there's the octave. And this is an A, so that's like a 10th. Okay. Now here we have a unison. The D is being sung by the bass and the tenor. So here in the alto we have an F, okay, and the D is a 10th below that. So like here's your F, right, the 4th line, So that would be the octave, and it's gone beyond that. Okay. Now, if you look here, between the bass and tenor, there's also a tenth, right? But it's okay between the tenor and the bass. You can have as much distance there as you like. Okay, so just have to be careful between soprano and alto and tenor. Okay. So after you have gained some experience in composing, you may begin to experiment with exceptions to these conventions. When you're composing for vocal ensembles, use these ranges here. Okay. So we have the soprano, and it starts on middle C, C4, and then it goes up to G5. So we have an octave and a fifth for that one. Okay. Now for the alto, it goes G3, right, up to D5. Okay. So we have another octave and a fifth. Okay. G to G is an octave, G to D is a perfect fifth. So here we go with the tenor. So you have C3 and then G4. So in another octave and a fifth. Okay. And that's an octave below the soprano. So it's the same distance. It's just an octave below. Okay. Now with bass, it goes all the way down to E2. That's the second E on the keyboard. And then it goes up to middle C. So that's an octave and a sixth. So keep these vocal ranges in mind when you're voicing a chord. Okay. And voicing is just the way that you choose to spread out the notes within the chord. And that can have a big difference on the way your music sounds. Okay. So with this information, we can start on the homework. Okay. So here we are. And we need to point out any places where those conventions that we just discussed are not followed. So we're looking out for spacing errors and crossed voices. Okay. So here everything looks okay. All right. D to B, that's within an octave. And then B to D here is also within an octave. Okay. This is a minor third, and that would be a major sixth. So we're good. Now here we have a D, a B, and another B. Okay, so the soprano and alto, those are an octave. That's fine. But look at the tenor line, the bass line. See, because the stem is down here for these, so there's no tenor line. It's just soprano, alto, and bass. Okay, so here we have a D in the bass, but there's a B in the alto. Okay, and this D here is D2, right? So that would belong here. See that? Because this line is middle C, right? So that's a crossed voice, and we don't want that. Okay. So we'll just put, we'll circle this. Okay. Now, oh, and when you analyze this one, make sure you account for this note because it's still being played. So here we go. We have the full range of the soprano here. We got between the alto and The soprano, we have an octave and a fifth, so that is way too much. We want it to stay within an octave, so that's not good. And we'll circle that. So, and then here we have middle C down to E. That's fine. Actually, that's a C sharp, so that would be a major sixth. All right, and here we go. You'll do the next one, and I'll do the last one. So here we have a B in the alto and a D in the soprano. So B to B would be an octave. So B to D would be 8, 9, 10, a tenth. We don't want that. And then B to B here is an octave, so that's just fine. Okay, so here we have 3 voice leading errors, 1 cross voices, and 2 spacing errors. Okay, so go ahead and fill out the rest of that, and I'll see you in the next section. Thank you. Okay, so here we are in section 5-2, part C, and we are to fill in the circled missing inner voices. So here we have the alto that we need to fill in this section, and then down here we need to fill in the alto and the tenor. So we need to make sure that each note of the triad is represented. The root, the third, and the fifth. Okay? And we also need to follow the spacing conventions and stay within the range of each vocal part. Okay, so let's start with number 1. And we're in the key of D minor, and we have a 4 chord. So, in the key of D minor, there's 1 flat, the B flat, okay? So we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and we build our triad from here. So we're going to have a G, B flat, and D, and that's a G minor triad, okay? The 4 chord in a minor key is minor, okay? So let's see what notes we have. Well, we have the G and the D. So, let's see. We could put the B here, and that is definitely in the range of the alto. Or we could put the B down here, like this. But what's the problem with that? See, the distance is more than an octave, right? An octave would be here on the D. So we need to stay within an octave between soprano and alto and tenor. So our only option is really right there. Okay, and I just wanted to show you that we are within the range of the alto. It goes all the way up to D5, and we're on the B. So it might be handy to keep this nearby when you're doing this exercise. Okay, so we'll probably refer back to that later. All right, now number 3. We're in the key of B minor, and we're going to be voicing a 1 chord. And we already have the B and the D. So we have the root and the third. Now we need the 5th of the chord. And in the key of B minor, there are 2 sharps, just like the key of D major. F sharp, and C sharp. Okay, so we're building a 1 chord, so we're going to need to build a minor triad. So we're going to go a minor third up, B to D, and then a major third, D to F sharp. So we need the F sharp in this chord. And the most obvious choice is just right there. Okay? So make sure that you point your stems in the right direction too. The alto and bass, the stems are pointing down. Okay? And tenor and soprano, they're pointing up. So, okay, let's try number 5. In these ones, we need to do the alto and the tenor. So we're in the key of G major, 1 sharp, the F sharp, and we need to build a 4 chord. And we can tell that that's major, all right? So, here we are, the key of G major. The G major scale goes up and then to the F sharp and then back to the G. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There would be our 4 chord, and we need to build a major triad from there. So it'd be C, E, and G. Okay. We have 2 C's. Okay, so our doubling is already done. So we just need an E and a G. Now, what if we did this? How does that look? Well, if you look closely, you can see that there's a spacing error between the alto and the tenor, right? That's more than an octave. So we don't want to do that. What if we just switch the voices? Okay, so we'll put the E up here and the G here. That looks good, right? That's better. Everything is within its range and there are no spacing errors. Okay. Alright, so now let's try number 7. And we have the key of B flat, 2 flats, and we want to build a 3 chord. Okay, so in the key of B flat, major, 2 flats, B flat, E flat. So the 3 chord would be 1, 2, 3, right? Whole step, whole step. And the 3 chord in a major key is minor. So we're going to want to go up a minor third. 1, 2, 3 half steps, staying within the key. D, F, and A. So the 3 chord is a D minor triad. All right. So the D's are already doubled. So we need an F and an A. Okay. So let's see. We could put the A here. Right? But will that leave any room for the F? We got C, A. There's the A, right? There's the same A. And the F would be down here. So no, that would be voice crossing. Okay. So what we're going to want to do is just switch those voices around. We'll put the F here. And the A go right there. Okay. All right. So that is more of a closed voicing. Whereas this is more like an open. And we're going to get more into that in the next section. So I'll see you in part D. Bye now. Okay, so here we are in part D. And in the following examples, we're given the soprano note for each chord. We need to supply the alto, the tenor, and the bass for each triad. Okay, and we also have to make sure that it is either in closed position or open position as specified or as indicated. So, and we also want to make sure that we double the root of each chord. These are root position, major and minor triads. So composers most often double the root of these chords. So let's review the open and closed structure. If you remember that the closed structure is less than an octave between soprano and tenor, okay? Less than an octave. And open structure is an octave or more between soprano and tenor, okay? All right, so starting off with number 1, we're in the key of A major, and we need a 2 chord. And the key of A major has 3 sharps, F, C, G, right? Okay, so let's find the 2 chord. Here's our keyboard, and we're in the key of A major. Here's our tonic, and we have the F, C sharp, and G sharp, okay, and C. So we need to build a 2 chord, and the 2 chord in a major key is minor, right? 1, 4, and 5 are major. So we're going to build a minor triad from the B. So we'll go B, up a minor third to D, and then a major third up to the F sharp. So we need B, D, and F sharp, okay? And we have to double the B. Oh. We're given an F sharp in the soprano. So we just need 2 B's and a D. Okay, so let's see. Do a B here and a D here. That would be fine. If we tried to put the B down here and the D up here, that would be voice crossing, so we want to avoid that. This is a closed structure, so we also need the soprano and alto to be less than an octave. Okay, so B to F sharp is a perfect 5th. So we're good there. So now let's just double that B. Down here in the bass. And we're done. Okay. So, number 3. We're in the key of C minor, which has 3 flats. And we're to build a 5 chord. Okay? So, remember, with the 5 chords, we have to raise the leading tone. Okay? Because this is a major chord. Okay? Now, so in the key of C minor, there are 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat. Okay, So here's our root, and we have B flat, E flat, A flat. Okay. So C, D, E flat, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our 5 chord. Now, if we just build that with the key signature, we'd have G, B flat, and D. But that's minor, right? We want a major 5 chord here. So we're going to take the 7th scale degree, and in natural minor, that is the subtonic. It's a whole step away from the root, from the tonic. Okay, so we want to raise that up a half a step to the B natural. Okay, now that gives us the G major triad. Okay, so remember to raise that up to the leading tone. Here's subtonic, leading tone, and tonic. Okay, so we need G, B natural, D. And they already did that for us here. We have the B natural. So we need a D and 2 G's. Okay, so, and this also, we need to have this as a closed structure. So, that's going to make it a little more challenging. So we need less than an octave between soprano and alto. Oh. Let's put a G there. Okay, so at least we have one of our G's done. And let's see. Can we put another G here? Yes, we can. Okay, so we need a D. So there's middle C, and there's the D. Now let's check that. Soprano and tenor. Okay, we've got a B and a D. So we're safe. D to B is a major 6th. All right, okay. So it wouldn't have worked any other way to keep it closed structure. Moving on to number 5. We're in G minor, and we have 2 flats, B flat and E flat, and we want to build a 6 chord. And the 6 chord in a minor key is major, as indicated by the Roman numeral, right? This uppercase 6. So, G minor, 2 flats. Let's find the 6 chord. Here we are, B flat, E flat. Okay, those are our 2 flats. And then here is the root of our chord, and here's the octave. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We land on the E flat, and we want to build a major triad. We go E flat, G, B flat. Okay, it fits nicely right diatonically within the key. All of these notes are within the key of G minor, right? Okay, so E flat, G, B flat. Okay, so E flat major, we have the B flat. So we need a G and 2 E flats. And this is an open structure. So there can be more than an octave or more between the soprano and the tenor. So let's see. Well, we know we want an E flat in the bass, so let's try here. Okay. Now we need a G and another E flat. So what if we put the G here? And we could do this if the tenor will go down that far, which it will. You can see that the tenor will go all the way down to C3. So we're here on E flat, and there's definitely more than an octave between the two voices. So this would work. Another way you could do this, instead of having the unison there, we could just switch these notes around and see if that works. So let's try the E flat here. And then we'll put the G right here. Okay, and there's still more than an octave between the soprano and the tenor, right? G to B. Okay, so that's a tenth. So either way works. I think we'll stick with this one though. And the last one, number 7, we have a closed voicing for 5 chord in the key of B flat major. Okay, so B flat major has 2 flats, B flat and E flat, and we're looking for the 5 chord. So we go whole, whole, half, whole, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's our F. So let's bring it down an octave so we can see everything. So we need to build a major triad, and we have F, A, C, F major. Okay, so we have an F, so we need another F and an A and a C. Let's see, we want it closed, so let's see, let's try this, F, and then we should put the A here and the C here. And let's see, so A to F, that's a minor sixth, so we're good. And everything else looks fine, so let's just stick with that voicing there. And go ahead and fill out the rest, and I'll see you in the next section. Thanks a lot. Okay, so it's time to go over the Fiendish 5. This is everything you need to know about part writing and the errors that we want to avoid. Okay, so number 1, avoid parallel fifths, octaves, and unisons. Static motion, both notes repeating, is okay. Okay, so here we have an octave in Fs, right? And if they were to move over to another octave in Fs, the same 2 notes, that's fine, that's static motion. It's when they move parallel, like they do here, from F to C. These are both octaves, and they're moving in parallel motion, so we want to avoid that. And also, we want to avoid parallel fifths. And then we have here You see we have F to C, that's a perfect fifth, and then G to D, another perfect fifth, and they're moving in parallel motion. Okay, so we want to avoid that. And we also have to be careful with unisons because those are considered octaves. Okay, and we have unequal fifths, which are a diminished fifth to a perfect fifth, or a perfect fifth to a diminished fifth. Okay, they are allowed except for the diminished fifth to perfect fifth involving the bass. Okay, so here we have C to G, right, in alto and soprano, going to a B to an F, and that's a diminished fifth, right? So it's not involving the bass at all, right? So it's okay. Here we have the same thing, but opposite. Here we have a diminished fifth, right, B to F, going to a perfect fifth, C to G. And it is involving the bass. See that? So that's what we want to avoid. So number 2, avoid fifths or octaves by contrary motion. Okay, so fifths or octaves by contrary motion equals perfect eighth to perfect eighth, or perfect fifth to perfect fifth between the same two parts. Avoid contrary motion, perfect fifths to perfect eighths, between any two parts. Unisons count like octaves. Okay. So here we have an octave, F to F, soprano and bass, moving to an octave also in soprano and bass. Okay. So these are moving in contrary motion, right? So here we have contrary fifths, okay? We have F to C, a perfect fifth, going from C to G, another perfect fifth in the same two voices in contrary motion. Okay. Now here's an exception. Contrary octaves are okay only if 1, add a cadence, which is the end of the phrase, and soprano and bass both state 5 to 1 of the key. So here we are. We're at a cadence 5 to 1 cadence, and both soprano and bass are going 5 to 1, G to C. Okay, so that will help out. Now here, number 3, we need to avoid direct fifths or octaves, also called hidden fifths or octaves, and you'll see why. Avoid direct perfect fifths and perfect octaves. A direct or hidden fifth or octave fulfills all of the following conditions. So there are 3 conditions for this one. Okay. The soprano has a leap, not a step. Soprano and bass moving in similar motion, both up or both down, but not parallel motion. Okay, so the goal interval is a perfect fifth or perfect eighth between soprano and bass only. So this only involves the soprano and the bass, and you're going to need to see a leap in the soprano. Here we have the A leaping up to D, right? And the bass is moving in similar motion, right? F to G, okay? So it's not exactly parallel motion, it's just similar motion, okay? So those are direct fifths, and here's an example of a direct octave. So here we go. We have F to A, and the soprano leaps, and the bass moves in similar motion again to an octave. So it really doesn't matter what this interval is, as long as the soprano is leaping and the bass is moving in similar motion to an octave or a fifth. That is a hidden fifth, okay? Or direct fifth. Now, here we go. It's okay if the soprano steps and it doesn't end up in parallel fifths. Okay, so here we have the soprano stepping, a C to D. And then we have E to A. Okay, I mean E to C, I'm sorry. So that's a minor sixth going to a perfect fifth. Okay, so you only have to worry about it if the soprano leaps. Okay, all right. So here we go. This is something handy to know when you're trying to voice a chord in a minor key, especially the 5 chord or the 7 diminished 7 chord, or the 7 diminished triad. So here we go. Use an accidental to make the leading tone in minor keys. Raise the 7th scale step in minor keys to make the 5 chord, the 5 triad, major, and the 7 diminished triad diminished. Okay, so here's an example. We have E minor, the 5 chord. So we have B, D, F sharp. B, D, and F sharp is minor. So we need to raise the 7th scale degree up a half step from the D to the D sharp. Okay, we're going from D to D sharp, and that makes it major. Now it is a 5 chord in the key of E. All right. Okay, now here's the 7 diminished. Here is the major 7 chord in D minor. I mean E minor. All right, it's a D major triad. Okay, D, F sharp, A. And that only resolves to the 3 chord. That resolves to the G. It's like a 5-to-1 in the relative major key. Okay, so if you want to make it a 7 diminished triad, we must raise the leading tone again. Okay, so here's a 7 diminished, question mark, D, F sharp, A. That's just a major triad. So we want to raise the D up to a D sharp. Now it's the leading tone, D sharp, F sharp, A. Okay, now it's truly a 7 diminished. And we want to use the inversion, first inversion for 4-part harmony. Okay. Now the last one. Always resolve tendency tones. Okay. Leading tones. A. Don't double the leading tone. It creates unavoidable parallels. So B, soprano or bass, the leading tone resolves up by step. Alto or tenor may resolve down a third or up by step. So in soprano and bass, the leading tone must always go up by step. In alto and tenor, you can do what's called frustrating the leading tone, and you can make it resolve down a third or up by step. Okay. Avoid the 7 diminished or 2 diminished in root position due to the unstable diminished fifth above the bass. Okay, that's why we use first inversion on diminished triads. Other tendency tones. Sevenths of 7th chords resolve down by step. Augmented 6th chord and Neapolitan 6th chords resolve according to standard patterns. See chapter 3. So that's more like theory 3 stuff. Okay. don't worry about the augmented sixth and the Neapolitans just yet. So just remember that the seventh of a seventh chord resolves down by step. Leading tone resolves up unless it's in an inner voice, and never double the leading tone. Okay, so I know that's a lot to take in. So we'll do these one at a time, and I'll see you in the homework section. Thanks. Okay, so here we are in part C. Now we're to find and label the following errors in this passage. So I'm going to be doing the odd ones. I'm going to be looking for parallel octaves, a direct fifth, and a spacing error. Okay, so I've already scanned this, and here right away I can see the spacing error. Okay, so that's number 5. And here we have an octave, E to E, and another octave, B to B, both in soprano and bass, moving in parallel motion. Okay, so that would be number 1, and you can write that like this, parallel octave, and that's one way to do it. And next I just need to find a direct fifth. Alright, and with the direct fifths, we know that we're looking for the soprano to leap. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is look for a leaping the soprano, and here's one. The soprano leaps. It moves into a fifth. Alright, but the bass doesn't move in similar motion, so we're good to go. Here's another leap in the soprano. Bass moves in contrary motion. Okay, can't be it. Okay, the last leap is here. So we have a leap in the soprano. The bass is moving in similar motion. And F to C is a perfect fifth. So that would be the direct fifths. So number 3. And then we could put this direct fifth there. Okay, so go ahead and find the parallel fifths and the contrary fifths, and I'll see you in the next section. Okay, so here we are in part D, and we're to find and label the following errors in this passage. So I'm going to be looking for parallel octaves and a direct octave. Okay, so I'm just looking for octaves right now between any two voices. I see an octave here, D to D, but it doesn't move into an octave. Okay, and E to E is an octave, but we have contrary motion between these two voices, so we're safe. Here's D to D, an octave, another contrary motion. Here we go, E to E. There's an octave, but it doesn't move to an octave. Okay, let's see. Here we go, A to A, G to G. There are the parallel octaves. Parallel octave, number 1. Okay, now I'm just looking for a direct octave. So I'm looking for a leap in the soprano and the bass to move in similar motion to an octave. So here's a leap in the soprano. Bass moves in similar motion, but it's not moving to an octave. Okay, so let's look for another leap. And we have a leap here, and bass moves in similar motion, and E to E is an octave. So there it is. Direct octave. You can see the octave there. You can put that bracket if you want. There it is. And for 3. So go ahead and find the parallel fifths and the spacing error, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Thanks a lot. Bye now.